My supervising physician called me incompetent in front of an entire surgical team because I refused to falsify patient records for him. My name is Mira Okafor, and I'm a surgical resident who spent 7 years fighting to become a doctor. He thought destroying my medical career would silence me forever. He was wrong. It happened during morning rounds at Westbridge Medical Center. Dr. Kieran Walsh was reviewing post-op cases when he noticed I'd documented a complication from yesterday's surgery, one he'd caused through negligence. "Dr. Okafor, why would you write this nonsense?" he asked, voice dripping with condescension. "Sir, the patient experienced excessive bleeding due to their pre-existing condition, which you would know if you were competent enough to review their history properly. But Dr. Walsh, I did review it. The bleeding occurred because... Enough! You're clearly not ready for this level of responsibility." He turned to the other residents. "This is what happens when we lower our standards." Every eye in that hallway turned away from me. Nobody defended me. Nobody questioned him. 2 days later, I was removed from the surgical rotation and assigned to overnight intake. My evaluations suddenly showed performance concerns. My future in surgery was being systematically destroyed, all because I wouldn't help him cover up his mistakes. I tried going through proper channels, filed a formal complaint with the hospital's ethics board, documented everything, the original patient chart, the timeline, witness statements from nurses who'd been in the OR. The ethics board took 3 weeks to respond. When they finally did, the meeting included Dr. Walsh, the chief of surgery, his mentor, and me. No neutral party, no patient advocate. "Dr. Okafor, these are serious allegations," the chief said. "Do you understand what you're accusing Dr. Walsh of?" "Yes, sir. Medical negligence and falsifying records." Dr. Walsh shook his head sadly. "I've tried to support Dr. Okafor, but she struggled with the pressure of surgical residency. This complaint seems like deflection from her own performance issues. That's not true. I have documentation." "Documentation you created after receiving negative feedback," the chief interrupted. "Dr. Okafor, I'm recommending you take a leave of absence. Consider whether the specialty is right for you." They were protecting him. The hospital, the department, the entire system. They'd rather destroy my career than admit one of their senior surgeons had made a mistake. I left that meeting understanding something crucial: the institution would always protect its own. If I wanted justice, I'd have to find it outside these walls. Within 2 weeks, I couldn't get interviews anywhere. I applied to 20 different hospitals, urgent care centers, even private practices. My qualifications were excellent, top of my medical school class, strong recommendations from most of my rotations. But nobody called back. Finally, my former classmate Yasmin called me. She worked in administration at a hospital where I'd applied. "Mira, I need to tell you something." "Off the record." "What?" "Your application was flagged. Someone from Westbridge called and said you were terminated for unprofessional conduct. Said you were emotionally unstable and made false accusations against senior staff." My chest tightened. "They're blacklisting me. It's worse. They're specifically warning hospitals that you're litigious. Nobody wants to hire someone they think will sue them. But I haven't sued anyone. Doesn't matter. The warning is enough." I hung up feeling sick. I'd spent 7 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars becoming a doctor. I'd survived medical school, crushing debt, 100-hour weeks, and endless exams. I'd sacrificed relationships, sleep, and health. And one man's ego had erased all of it in 2 weeks. I'd grown up in a small town where the nearest hospital was 40 minutes away. When I was 12, my younger brother Emmanuel had a severe asthma attack. By the time we got to the ER, he was barely breathing. The doctor who saved him was a black woman, the first black doctor I'd ever seen. She was calm, competent, and kind. She explained everything to my terrified mother in simple terms. Made Emmanuel laugh even as she treated him. "You're going to be fine, sweetheart," she told him. Then she looked at me. "You're a good big sister." Stayed so calm. Ever think about becoming a doctor? From that moment I knew. Despite my family having no money, despite growing up in a community where girls were told to be practical, despite every barrier, I knew I'd become a doctor. My mother worked 3 jobs to help pay for college. I graduated with honors, got into medical school on scholarship, worked overnight shifts at a pharmacy to cover living expenses. Studied until my eyes burned. Every exam I passed was for Emmanuel. For my mother. For that doctor who showed me it was possible. And now Dr. Walsh was destroying everything I'd built. I took a job at a 24-hour pharmacy doing prescription intake. Minimum wage. No benefits. I'd gone from surgical resident to retail worker in 3 weeks. My student loan payments were $1,800 a month. My rent was $1,200. The pharmacy job paid barely enough to cover rent. I started skipping meals. Stopped buying anything unnecessary. Borrowed money from Yasmin. My landlord, Mrs. Patel, knocked on my door one evening. She'd always been kind, knew I was a medical resident, was proud to have a doctor in her building. Mira, I hate to do this, but you're 3 weeks late on rent. I know. I'm so sorry. I lost my position at the hospital. I'm working on finding. You're not a doctor anymore. I'm still a doctor. I'm between positions right now. She looked uncomfortable. I have bills too. I need the rent by next week, or I'll have to start eviction proceedings. After she left, I sat on my apartment floor and cried. 7 years of sacrifice. All destroyed because I tried to do the right thing. But as I cried, something else began building inside me. Not despair. Anger. Cold, focused anger. If the system wouldn't give me justice, I'd find another way. A text came from an unknown number 2 days later. It's Nurse Holly from Westbridge. Can we meet? I have information about Dr. Walsh. Holly Brennan had worked in the surgical unit. Quiet, competent, someone who kept her head down. We'd barely spoken. We met at a coffee shop across town. She looked nervous, kept glancing around. Why did you want to see me? I asked. Because you're not the first. Dr. Walsh has done this before. She pulled out her phone, showed me screenshots of messages between hospital staff, email threads, incident reports that had been buried. 4 years ago, a nurse named Kara reported him for surgical negligence. She was fired for creating a hostile work environment. 3 years ago, another resident, male, questioned his judgment during a procedure. Suddenly had performance issues. Left the program. How many people? At least 6 that I know of. Anyone who challenges him gets destroyed. The hospital protects him because he brings in money. He's their top billing surgeon. Why are you telling me this? Because you filed a formal complaint. You didn't just quit. You tried to do it the right way. She looked at me intently. And I think you're brave enough to do what the rest of us couldn't. Which is, make people listen. Make them care. Make this public. She kept copies of everything. Patient charts showing patterns of complications. Internal emails about covering up incidents. Financial documents showing Walsh's revenue importance to the hospital. Take these, Holly said. Use them. End him. I created an anonymous blog that night. Called it The Incompetent One, reclaiming the insult Walsh had used against me. I wrote my story. No names initially. Just facts. A surgical resident who witnessed medical negligence. A senior surgeon who retaliated. A hospital system that prioritized money over patient safety. I posted it at 2 a.m. and fell asleep not expecting anything. By morning, it had been shared 3,000 times. Comments flooded in. Medical professionals recognizing the pattern. Patients sharing their own experiences of feeling dismissed or gaslit by doctors. Advocates demanding accountability in healthcare. I posted again the next day. More details about how hospitals protect bad doctors. How patient safety reports get buried. How medical errors are systematically hidden. 10,000 shares. I was careful. Used VPNs. Posted from public Wi-Fi. Never included identifying information. But I was building something. A community of people who understood that the medical system had deep, systemic problems. And somewhere, Dr. Walsh was probably reading every word, not knowing the incompetent resident he destroyed was the author. The third post opened submissions. I invited others to share their experiences with medical retaliation, cover-ups, and negligence. Within 48 hours, I received 200 stories. Medical students punished for reporting unsafe practices. Nurses fired for advocating for patients. Residents destroyed for questioning attendings. The pattern was everywhere. I verified what I could. Cross-referenced stories with news reports and public records. Built credibility carefully. Then I published a compilation, The pattern: how medicine protects bad doctors and destroys good ones. 15 were from Westbridge Medical Center. 7 specifically mentioned Dr. Walsh. One nurse described him verbally abusing staff in the OR. A patient's family member recounted complications that weren't disclosed. A medical student wrote about him taking credit for her research. Another resident, who'd left the program years ago, wrote, "He told me I was too stupid for surgery, that I should quit medicine entirely. I believed him. It destroyed my confidence for years." The post went viral. Healthcare workers shared it across professional networks. Patient advocacy groups amplified it. Medical ethics professors used it in teaching. The incompetent one had become a voice for everyone the system had failed. And I was just getting started. Media outlets started covering it. Healthcare journals wrote think pieces. Patient safety organizations called for investigations into the patterns I'd documented. News headlines asked, "Is medicine's culture of silence killing patients?" Reporters tried to identify which hospital, which doctor. They analyzed details, cross-referenced public records, investigated complaints. Some got close to Westbridge, but I'd been careful enough that nothing was confirmed. The hospital issued a bland statement: "We take all patient safety concerns seriously and have robust reporting systems." Dr. Walsh stayed silent, probably thought staying quiet was safest, that eventually the attention would fade. But I wasn't done. Not even close. The blog had given me something I'd lost: power. For weeks, I'd felt helpless, watched my career disintegrate, struggled to survive. Now I had a platform, an audience, proof that I wasn't alone, that the problem wasn't me, it was the system that protected men like Walsh. And I was about to make it impossible for anyone to ignore. Dr. Walsh finally broke his silence on a medical leadership podcast, spoke eloquently about maintaining standards and the dangers of social media mob mentality. "These anonymous accusations are dangerous," he said. "Anyone can make claims without evidence. We can't destroy careers based on internet rumors." The host asked about his own reputation. Had he faced false accusations? Unfortunately, yes. Young doctors sometimes struggle with feedback. Instead of improving, they lash out. It's a pattern we're seeing more of. He sounded so reasonable, so thoughtful, like someone genuinely concerned about professional standards, rather than someone covering up medical negligence and career destruction. The comments were mixed. Some supported him. Others saw through it. But I'd been waiting for this. For him to speak publicly. To go on record denying everything. Because I had something he didn't know about. Something Holly had given me along with all those documents. Audio recordings. From the surgical unit. Conversations where Walsh had spoken about problem staff members. Where he joked about making residents cry. Where he'd explicitly discussed falsifying patient records. Holly had been recording for months, protecting herself in case he ever came after her. Now I had his own words, and I was about to destroy his credibility permanently. I posted the audio files with full transcripts, clear timestamps, context for each recording. Nothing was taken out of context or manipulated, just Walsh's own words condemning him. In one clip, he discussed a patient complication. Just write that it was pre-existing. Nobody reviews these thoroughly anyway. In another, he talked about a resident who'd questioned him. "She'll be gone by next month. I'll make sure of it." In a third, he joked with another surgeon. "The secret is making them think they're the problem. Gaslight them a little, and they crumble." The recordings went viral within hours. Medical ethicists condemned them. Patient advocates called for immediate investigation. Healthcare workers expressed horror. Major news outlets picked up the story. Surgeon caught on audio discussing falsifying records and retaliating against staff. The medical licensing board announced they were reviewing complaints. Multiple lawyers offered pro bono services to potential victims. Dr. Walsh issued a statement through his attorney. "These recordings are taken out of context and may have been illegally obtained." But context didn't change what he'd said, and legality didn't matter to the court of public opinion. His credibility was destroyed, and I still hadn't revealed my identity. Other staff members at Westbridge started reaching out. Not just to me, to reporters, lawyers, regulators. People who'd been silenced suddenly felt safe speaking up. An OR nurse sent me surgical logs showing patterns of complications in Walsh's cases. far higher than average. The hospital had known for years but buried it. A medical records clerk sent documentation of charts being altered, always in Walsh's cases, always minimizing complications or errors. An administrator leaked financial records showing Walsh had been the hospital's top revenue generator. They protected him because losing him meant losing millions in surgical fees. The pattern was clear. Westbridge had knowingly enabled a negligent surgeon because he was profitable. A journalist named Carlos Mendez contacted me through the blog. He'd been investigating medical fraud and malpractice for years. "I want to do a comprehensive investigation," he said. "I can protect your anonymity, but I need access to everything you have." I sent him everything. He verified it with his own sources, built an airtight case. 2 weeks later, his article appeared in a national newspaper. How one hospital chose profit over patients. It named Westbridge, named Walsh, detailed years of covered-up complications, silenced whistleblowers, and institutional failure. The story exploded. Carlos connected me with a lawyer named Simone Taylor. She specialized in medical whistleblower cases and had a reputation for taking on powerful institutions. "I've reviewed everything," Simone said. "We have a case, multiple cases, actually, against Walsh personally, against the hospital, potentially against the medical board for failing to investigate. I don't want money. I want him stopped. I understand. But legal action will accomplish that more effectively than anything else. It creates formal accountability." She explained the strategy. File complaints with the medical licensing board, sue the hospital for wrongful termination and retaliation, and coordinate with other victims for a class action. Your blog created awareness. Now we turn that into legal pressure they can't ignore. Over the next month, we quietly built a coalition. 7 former Westbridge employees, willing to testify. 4 patients willing to share their stories. Documentation proving systematic cover-ups. We didn't announce anything publicly, just methodically prepared for the legal battle ahead. Meanwhile, the blog continued. I'd built an audience that trusted me, that believed my analysis, that amplified every new piece of information. I was no longer just a wronged resident. I'd become an investigative voice, a catalyst for change, someone who couldn't be dismissed or silenced. I created a confidential email for victims of medical retaliation. Within a week, I had 300 messages. Most were from nurses and residents, but some were from patients or their families, people who'd been harmed by medical negligence and then gaslit into thinking it was their fault. One message made me cry. I was 17 when I interned at Westbridge. Dr. Walsh made inappropriate comments about my appearance. When I reported it to my supervisor, I was told I was overreacting and removed from the surgical rotation. I quit medicine entirely. I'm 24 now and still have nightmares. She'd been a minor. Walsh had sexually harassed a teenager, and the hospital had protected him. I forwarded her message to Simone immediately. This changes everything. It's not just medical negligence anymore. It's sexual harassment. Failure to protect a minor. This could trigger criminal investigation. The woman agreed to speak with authorities. 3 other former interns came forward with similar stories after her message became public. Walsh wasn't just a negligent surgeon. He was a predator, and Westbridge had enabled him for years. An unexpected ally emerged. Adriana Pierce, a venture capital investor who'd made millions in healthcare startups. She'd been following the blog and reached out through Simone. "I own 23% of the private equity fund that has controlling interest in Westbridge," she explained when we met. "I had no idea about Walsh until your blog. Now I'm furious. Why are you helping?" "Because I'm a woman in a male-dominated industry. I've dealt with men like Walsh. And because patient safety should matter more than profits. She had power I didn't, board access, financial leverage, insider knowledge of how decisions were made. The hospital is going to try to contain this quietly, settle with victims, make Walsh resign without admitting fault, then move on. Can you stop that? I can make it very expensive for them. I can force a full independent investigation. I can push for systematic reforms. But I need your help building public pressure so they can't bury this." We became strategic partners. She worked inside the power structure. I worked outside it through public pressure. Together, we made it impossible for Westbridge to make this disappear quietly. Adriana forced an emergency board meeting to review Walsh's conduct and the hospital's handling of complaints. The board tried to keep it confidential. She leaked the meeting agenda to Carlos. It appeared in his next article. Westbridge Board to review surgeon's conduct after whistleblower revelations. The hospital couldn't ignore it anymore. Couldn't pretend this was just social media noise. Local news stations started covering it. Patients expressed concern. Other doctors began questioning whether they wanted to be associated with Westbridge. The hospital's PR team issued statements about commitment to patient safety and robust investigation procedures. But behind the scenes, they were panicking. The board wanted this to go away. The CEO wanted to protect the hospital's reputation. The legal team wanted to minimize liability. Adriana told me they were discussing offering me a settlement, $1 million to sign an NDA and disappear. Don't take it, she advised. Not yet. We have more leverage than they think. She was right, because I had one more card to play, something that would make it impossible for the public to look away. I created a video, 15 minutes long, sat in front of my laptop camera wearing a simple mask and using voice distortion software. My name is the Incompetent One. For 2 months, I've been sharing stories of medical retaliation and institutional failure. It's time you knew mine. I outlined my entire journey. Medical school, residency, witnessing Walsh's negligence, the retaliation, the blacklisting, the destruction of my career. I explained how hospitals protect profitable doctors, regardless of patient safety. How whistleblowers get destroyed while negligent physicians continue practicing. How the system prioritizes reputation over accountability. I showed receipts, not enough to identify me, but enough to prove every claim. Patient outcome data, financial records, testimony from other victims. I'm one person, but I represent hundreds, thousands, everyone who's been silenced by medical institutions that care more about money than lives. I ended with a challenge. Demand better. Demand accountability. Demand that patient safety matters more than profit. The video went viral immediately. 5 million views in 24 hours. News organizations analyzed it frame by frame. Medical professionals debated it passionately. Within 48 hours, reporters had identified Westbridge and Walsh through details in the video. Within 72 hours, someone had figured out I was the resident Walsh had removed from surgical rotation. My anonymity was over. My phone exploded with messages once people identified me. Journalists requesting interviews. Trolls sending threats. Supporters offering help. It was overwhelming and terrifying. Some people called me brave. Others called me an attention seeker destroying a good doctor's reputation. The harassment was intense. Death threats, doxing attempts, vicious personal attacks. But the support was louder. Medical professionals thanked me for speaking up. Patients shared their own stories. Advocates praised my courage. Carlos published a follow-up. Meet Dr. Mira Okafor, the surgical resident who took on a hospital system. The article included my photo, my background, my qualifications. It humanized me, showed I wasn't some disgruntled employee but a talented doctor destroyed for doing the right thing. Within days, I was trending on social media. Hashtag I stand with Mira. Hashtag believe medical whistleblowers. Hashtag fix medicine. Yasmin called, crying. I'm so proud of you. So scared for you. But so proud. My mother called from home. Baby, what's happening? Why is your face on the news? I explained everything. She listened quietly. Are you safe? She asked finally. Yes, Mama. Then I'm proud of you. So proud. A major news network invited me for a live interview. Simone advised me to do it. Control your narrative. Show them who you are. Make it impossible for them to dismiss you. I sat across from the host, hands shaking slightly, and told my story on national television. The segment was 20 minutes, an eternity in TV news. I talked about witnessing Walsh's negligence, about trying to do the right thing, about the retaliation and blacklisting, about discovering I wasn't alone. Why didn't you just move on? The host asked. Find another residency? Because moving on means he keeps hurting patients, keeps destroying careers. The system only changes when people refuse to stay silent. Some doctors say you're damaging medicine's reputation. Medicine's reputation damages itself when it protects bad doctors. I'm just making people see what's always been there. The interview went viral. Clips were shared millions of times. My name trended for 3 days straight. More victims came forward, not just from Westbridge, but from hospitals across the country. My story had opened floodgates. People who'd suffered in silence suddenly felt safe speaking up. The pressure became unbearable for Westbridge. The Medical Licensing Board announced a formal investigation. The State Health Department opened a review. Federal regulators started examining the hospital's safety practices. The board suspended Dr. Walsh pending investigation. 2 weeks later, after internal audits confirmed systematic cover-ups, they terminated him. But it went further. The chief of surgery, Walsh's mentor who'd protected him, was forced to resign. The ethics board chair was removed. 3 administrators were fired for destroying evidence. The hospital issued a public apology. We failed our patients and our staff. We enabled a toxic culture that prioritized reputation over safety. We're committed to comprehensive reforms. They announced changes: independent oversight of patient safety reports, mandatory training on retaliation, anonymous reporting systems, and regular audits. The stock price of the private equity fund that owned Westbridge dropped 30%. Patient admissions declined. Doctors started leaving. Dr. Walsh's medical license was suspended pending review. He faced potential criminal charges for falsifying records. Civil lawsuits from patients were piling up. His career was destroyed. His reputation was in ruins. Everything he'd built had collapsed. And I'd done it without ever raising my voice. Just by refusing to stay silent. Westbridge offered me a settlement. $3 million. Full reinstatement to the surgical residency program. A public apology. Glowing recommendations. All contingent on signing an NDA. Simone laid out the offer in her office. This is a good deal, Mira. Life-changing money. A path back to surgery. But I can't talk about what happened. That's the trade-off. I thought about it for 3 days. $3 million would erase my debt. Let me finish residency. Give me the career I'd always wanted. But it would also mean staying quiet. Letting Westbridge control the narrative. Accepting that justice had a price. I'm rejecting it, I told Simone. Mira, I didn't do this for money. I did it because the system needs to change. Taking their money to stay quiet validates the same system that destroyed me. What will you do instead? Something better. I negotiated a different deal. A smaller settlement, enough to cover my immediate needs. No NDA. And a commitment from Westbridge to fund systemic reforms. Then I took the rest of what I would have received and created a foundation. Called it Safe Harbor, supporting medical whistleblowers, funding patient advocacy, and pushing for institutional change. The foundation launched with significant public attention. Donations poured in from healthcare workers, from patients, from people who believed in the mission. Within 6 months, we'd helped 23 medical professionals who faced retaliation. Funded 3 lawsuits against negligent physicians. Pushed for policy changes in 4 states. We created resources, legal guides for whistleblowers, directories of patient advocates, educational materials about navigating medical harm. Healthcare organizations started inviting me to speak. Medical schools wanted me to lecture about ethics and institutional accountability. Hospital systems asked me to consult on culture change. I'd gone from destroyed resident to national advocate, from silenced to amplified, from victim to leader. Dr. Walsh, meanwhile, faced trial for medical fraud. Multiple civil lawsuits. Complete professional ruin. I didn't attend his trial. Didn't need to see him one more time. His consequences were his own making. A year after everything started, I received my medical license back. The medical board had cleared me completely, acknowledging I'd been wrongfully retaliated against. I could return to residency if I wanted, finish my surgical training, become the surgeon I'd always dreamed of being. But something had shifted. The work I was doing now, advocacy, systemic change, supporting other whistleblowers, felt more important than any surgery. I could save individual patients in an or I could change systems that affected thousands. You've created something powerful, Adriana told me. You've given a voice to people who had none. My mother visited me in the city, saw the foundation office. met the staff, listened to testimonials from people we'd helped. "I'm so proud, baby," she said, crying. "Not just because of what you've done, but because of who you are. You're that doctor who saved Emmanuel, the one who shows others what's possible." That was the highest compliment she could give, because that doctor had changed my life by showing me I belonged in medicine. Now I was showing others that medicine could be better, that speaking up mattered, that institutions could change. I was invited to speak at a major medical conference, 2,000 physicians in attendance. The topic, creating cultures of safety and accountability in healthcare. I stood on that stage, facing people who might have ignored my story, who might have protected doctors like Walsh, who represented the system that had tried to destroy me. A year ago, I was working overnight shifts at a pharmacy because I'd been blacklisted from medicine. Today, I'm here because I refuse to stay silent about negligence and retaliation. I talked about what I'd learned, about how fear keeps bad systems in place, about how change requires uncomfortable truth-telling, about how institutions only reform when forced by people brave enough to speak up. Some of you protected doctors like Walsh. Some of you looked away when whistleblowers were punished. Some of you prioritized reputation over patient safety. But you can change. Systems can change. Medicine can be better. The response was mixed. Some defensive, some thoughtful, some genuinely moved. But the conversation had started. Medical schools added my case to ethics curricula. Hospitals reformed their whistleblower policies. Professional organizations updated their standards. Meanwhile, federal investigators completed their review of Westbridge, found systematic violations, levied massive fines, required independent oversight for 5 years. The hospital struggled, eventually sold to a non-profit system committed to reform. Last week, I drove past Westbridge Medical Center, the building where I'd been humiliated and fired, where my career had been destroyed for trying to protect patients. A for-lease sign hung in the main entrance. The hospital had closed its surgical wing. Too many doctors had left. Too many patients had lost trust. The financial losses were unsustainable. I parked and stared at the building for a long time. Remembered the scared resident who'd walked out those doors a year ago. Uncertain, devastated, believing her career was over. That version of me wouldn't recognize who I'd become. The confidence, the purpose, the knowledge that I'd helped change something that desperately needed changing. My phone buzzed. A message from a medical student. I just reported a safety concern at my hospital. I was scared, but I remembered your story. Thank you for showing us we can speak up. Messages like that came daily now. From medical professionals finding courage. From patients advocating for themselves. From institutions implementing reforms. Dr. Walsh had called me incompetent, had tried to destroy me, had thought removing me from the or would silence me forever. Instead, he created something he never anticipated, a catalyst for change, a voice that wouldn't be silenced, proof that speaking truth mattered. I started the car and drove away from that empty building. It represented the past, a broken system that protected profit over patients. What I'd built, the foundation, the advocacy, the movement for accountability, that was the future. I smiled. Dr. Walsh had taught me something valuable, though he hadn't meant to. You can't destroy someone whose value isn't defined by your approval. I'd never been incompetent. I'd always been exactly what medicine needed. Someone brave enough to demand better. And now, no one would ever silence me again.